members of the Williamsport community, Lycoming College students, faculty, staff, and alumni, welcome to Lycoming College for a very special celebration to mark the occasion of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s visit to our campus. On April 24th, 1958, Dr. King stood in this chapel and spoke a message of love, freedom, equality, and justice. I am very pleased to see such a wonderful gathering of Lycoming's broader community here tonight to reflect on those words. My name is Jalen Williams, and as the president of Lycoming College's Student Senate, I would like to thank the Office of the President of Lycoming College, the Office of Civic Engagement and Personal Development, and the Student Planning Committee for Black History Month for making this possible. But I would especially like to thank the anonymous graduate of Lycoming College who was inspired by Dr. King and made a generous donation to commemorate this event. I now invite my classmate, Naisha Gordon, to continue with tonight's program.
Thank you, Jalen. As Jalen said, my name is Naisha Gordon. I am the Vice President of Lycoming College's Black Student Union, and I am a part of the Planning Committee for Black History Month. As we gather tonight to commemorate the visit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Lycoming College, we are honored to have Williamsport's Mayor, Derek Slaughter, here to help us reflect upon the message Dr. King delivered, not just in this chapel, but to a nation, and to celebrate the impact that message had on our communities. Mayor Slaughter was born and raised right here in Williamsport. After graduating from Williamsport Area High School, he earned a bachelor's degree from Penn State University, and then headed to the University of Maryland, College Park, to pursue graduate studies. Upon completion of his Master of Education, Mayor Slaughter returned to his hometown. After working in the Williamsport School District, where he taught math and served as head coach of the girls' varsity basketball team, Mayor Slaughter ran for City Council. Through his service on City Council, his passion and commitment to Williamsport grew. Soon thereafter, he entered and won the race for mayor with a platform of building strong communities. While he knows there are challenges facing Williamsport, he believes that if we meet them head on, we can find lasting solutions. Stepping into his new role as mayor of the city of Williamsport just last month, Mayor Slaughter is the city's first new mayor in 12 years, the first Democratic mayor in more than 30 years, and Williamsport's first African-American mayor. He joins us tonight. He joins us tonight along with his wife, Vanessa, their children, Jaden and Chloe, his mother, Judy, who is a 1974 graduate of Lycoming College, and his uncle, Larry Hickson. A close family friend of the Slaughters, Sandy Rose, also joins us tonight, as well as Mayor Slaughter's assistant, Janice, and her husband, Charles Holmes, a 2003 graduate of the college. Please welcome Mayor Derek Slaughter.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Good evening. I would first like to thank Lycoming College, Dr. Trachty, the Black Student Union, the Student Planning Committee for Black History Month, and the Office of Civic Engagement and Personal Development for sponsoring tonight's event. It is truly an honor and very humbling to be asked to speak at tonight's event commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King's historic visit to Lycoming College. I've spent many years reading and studying the life and times of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and this study has had a profound impact on me, both professionally and personally. In elementary school, as we were celebrating Black History Month, we were required to do a book report on a prominent Black historical figure. There were suggestions given, many others to choose from, but from a very young age, I was always drawn to learn and study about Dr. King. It was in those years that I can remember asking and wondering, why were schools segregated? Why were cities and towns segregated? What was the civil rights movement, and what did that mean? As a kid, the more I studied Dr. King, the more questions I had. As I matured throughout my life, his message became clearer and clearer. King urged me to think past my privilege and think with empathy, to think beyond fault and anger and towards love and service. As a middle school and high school student, I took a particular interest in quotes from famous leaders. What influenced me the most came from Dr. King. In high school, his quote that had the most profound impact on me was, "The time is always right to do what is right. The time is always right to do what is right." There are many times when it is difficult to do what is right, particularly when you are young. When faced with challenging decisions in school, my mind would wander back to Dr. King's quote, and I would be reminded that regardless of the circumstances, we always need to do what is right, what we believe to be right in that moment. Later, his message that whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly spoke loudly to me during college. I studied abroad in Spain and started to understand other cultures, stereotypes, and learned to face the misperceptions we have about others. I was interacting with folks whose lives were being affected directly by faults with which I had nothing to do, but that affected me indirectly. When we see faults that may or may not have been any of our own doing, we must see them as opportunities to change outcomes. I started to understand that me personally, had a responsibility to do good. Dr. King talks about this in his letter from the Birmingham jail. He says, "We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people." King tells us our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. We cannot remain silent about the things that matter. I took those guiding words and used them as my personal motto as I transitioned into my professional career. As I began teaching and coaching, I was seeing the impact larger decisions have on our youth and on our community as a whole. My students were asking the same questions I had as a kid. Dr. King's words and teachings became an even more important part of how I approached my answers to their questions. We cannot be silent about issues in our community, even though we may not be directly impacted. Even though we were not the cause of a fault, we have a responsibility to make our voices heard and foster change. It is so clear. We cannot be silent about the things that matter. Because we cannot be silent about the things that matter, I felt propelled to run for city council and ultimately for mayor. I live by this guiding wisdom daily as mayor of this small, unique city. I have a responsibility now to usher in new policies that empower and uplift our diverse and ever-changing population. It is my responsibility to see my privilege, my responsibility as a means to encourage others, and to show that by lifting up someone else, it does not mean we sacrifice or lose any of our own privilege. We are stronger together. We are stronger as people when we choose to live our lives lifting each other up. Dr. King preached these ideals. He lived these ideals. Each of us should bring these ideals into our own lives. Many of us here in this community do this. Two examples who come to mind are Pastor Raphael from City Church and Pastor Spencer from City Alliance. Their contributions to our community have been immeasurable. Raphael and Spencer are only two of many examples of folks here in our community who improve our area on a daily basis. I start each day thinking of one of Dr. King's simplest and most demanding queries. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? His question teaches us that what we do should be for others and for the greater good. His question teaches me that I am to ask, what will my administration do for others? As government leaders, we have a responsibility to be constantly evolving, developing better responses, finding better tools, looking for ways to better the lives of those to whom we are responsible. King, because of his thoughtful, powerful courage, challenged us to ask each day how we can do something for others, no matter how small it may be. It is why we stand up and become elected leaders for government, teachers in public education, coaches and mentors in youth programs, however we choose to serve. Dr. King tells all of us today, here in Williamsport, in cities throughout our region, our country, and in this world, that we are the ones who must spread nonviolent love. All of us here must stand up for what we believe in as measured by our moral compass. In that Birmingham jail, he spoke to current leaders in government, churches, and community institutions when he spoke of there being a type of constructive, nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. We have many nonprofit organizations, colleges, social organizations, churches, all of which play an immense role here in Williamsport. As leaders of these organizations, we know it will not always be smooth waters. We will not always agree, and change does not come easy. There will be tension. This tension is at its most powerful when it is born out of love and understanding. King asks us, was not Jesus an extremist for love? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. In a similar verse it says, know this, my dear brothers and sisters, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to grow angry. Leadership, as Reverend King preached and as we should take to understand it, must be measured, it must be nonviolent, and it must be done for the right reasons. Effective leadership requires emotional intelligence, knowing when to speak up and be heard, and knowing when to be silent and simply listen. Martin Luther King understood the difficulty in getting others to not grow angry or violent when they are confronted with prior transgressions, that they did not directly inflict on others. It wasn't their fault. He knew how difficult it is for people to accept the responsibility to urge policymakers to make changes necessary to right these wrongs. He knew how difficult that was, but he asked it of us anyway. This accepting of responsibility and understanding to speak without needing to be heard, to create tension when necessary, and to be quiet as well, that is a challenging and worthy goal, and there are days it is a struggle to achieve, but is how I strive to live on a daily basis. And now, as an adult, as a community member, as a government leader, I find myself thinking about Dr. King's teachings through one final lens, the lens of father. My young children are now both old enough to become inquisitive readers and are asking familiar questions. How can I respond to them in a way that speaks the loudest and gives them the most hope? How do we comfort them so that they believe we are moving forward and not backward? How do we answer them? What do we say to our children? We answer them by how we conduct our lives. We are to set an example and be the example we want them to follow. We are to show them compassion, love, and understanding. We must teach them about responsibility and being responsible to do good. We teach them that what happens in school or on the playground or in life might not be their fault, but they are absolutely responsible for the manner in which they respond. We must show them how to be brave enough to love, to hold compassion for one another, and to spark in them a willingness to serve in whatever capacity is needed. Our organizations would be better, Williamsport would be better. Most importantly, we would be better as people by showing love, compassion, and the will to serve. That is the message I attempt to pass down to my children and to those around me. King told us that we can serve. King told me that I should serve. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve, Dr. King says. Dr. King continues, you don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. I thank the love of my family and friends for making me the person I am and for always inspiring me to be the person I want to be. I thank Martin Luther King for giving me the words to understand that the power of the love we have been given is power enough to give to others. Whatever affects one affects all of us. We each have the grace to serve, and the time will always be right to do what is right. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak here tonight. This has been a true honor indeed. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kent Trachte. I'm the president of the college. I want to begin by saying, Mayor Slaughter, thank you for those thoughtful and inspiring words, and we are proud to have you serving as Mayor of Williamsport today. I have a text here, but I'm going to have to depart from it a little bit because of a conversation I had just before our event began. We have with us two alums who were here in 1958, is that correct? When Dr. King spoke, Ruth Hodges and Kay Williams. Let's recognize them, please. Kay Hoffman, sorry. Kay Hoffman, sorry. And we had a conversation, and there appears to be some disagreement about the title of the speech that Dr. King delivered on April 24th, 1958. There's a document that Kay gave me that says, was written in, I think, a Lycoming College publication, Kay, and it says that the topic of the speech was "A Great Time to Be Alive." However, in preparation for making my remarks tonight, I actually did research because I used to be a faculty member and I couldn't resist the temptation. And there's a wonderful archive, online archival source for Dr. King, and it lists all of the trips that he made, all of the visits, all the speeches he delivered from over about a 25-year period, about a 20-year period. And there it says that the Lycoming College speech was entitled Challenges of the New Age. I actually found that text from a couple of other locations because he delivered it on about 8 different occasions. And I think from my conversation with Kay and Ruth, there's probably some similarities. So I'm going to share a little bit about both the historical context and some of the words that were probably part of what Dr. King delivered, but it will be drawn from Challenge of the New Age, and I think probably some of these words will sound familiar, Kay and Ruth. So King's appearance at Lycoming came about 16 months after the successful conclusion of the Montgomery bus boycott. In the mid-1950s, Montgomery, Alabama, like many American cities in the South, operated a segregated bus system. The challenge to that system was precipitated when on December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks, in an act that has come to be seen as passive resistance, was arrested for boarding an all-white bus. What followed was a 13-month mass protest, that is basically boycotting the bus system, coordinated by the Montgomery Improvement Association, whose president was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The boycott ended in December 1956 after the Supreme Court ruled segregation on public buses unconstitutional. So as the Montgomery boycott reached its successful conclusion, we know that King began reflecting upon the advent of a new era and the challenges that lay ahead. As I suggested, he developed an address called Facing the Challenge of the New Age. And the first delivery of this speech that I could find in my research was on December 3rd, 1956, at a week-long institute on nonviolence and social change. And during the subsequent 2 years, he delivered this speech at least 8 times on college campuses, at churches, and in meetings of the NAACP. In fact, the record tells us that King spoke on a similar topic at Caltech and the Tuskegee Institute in the weeks immediately leading up to his appearance at Lycoming College. Now, unfortunately, the text does not still exist in our archives, but as I suggested, I found texts of this speech which were almost exactly similar from 2 other occasions. So the speech that Dr. King gave here likely lasted nearly an hour. Is that true, Ruth? He was a powerful orator, and he would get stirred up and could stir himself and an audience quite well. The speech that I found commences with King observing that those of us who live in the 20th century are privileged to live in one of the most momentous periods of human history. He said, "It is an exciting age filled with hope. It is an age in which a new world order is being born. And we stand today," King said, "between 2 worlds, the dying old and the emerging new." He then, in this speech, acknowledges that the period is filled with discontent and tension. But picking up on a theme from Mayor Slaughter's speech, he says that the present tensions represent the necessary pains that accompany the birth of anything new. And he notes that the Greek philosopher Heraclitus argued that justice emerges from the strife of opposites. King then concludes this section of his remarks by re-emphasizing the tensions which we are witnessing are indicative of the fact that a new world is being born and an old world is passing away. Having established this premise, he then takes up the main topic by noting that with the coming of anything new, there are new responsibilities and new challenges. In the passages that follows, he identifies the challenges of the new age, and the themes are very similar to what Mayor Slaughter articulated. In the first challenge, he says, is to rise above the narrow confines of our individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of humanity. King explained, "The world in which we live is geographically one, and now we must make it spiritually one. Through our scientific genius, we have made of the world a neighborhood. Now, through our moral and spiritual genius, we must make of it a brotherhood." King then continued by identifying what he called the most basic challenge. "We are challenged to enter the new age with understanding and goodwill in our hearts. We must blot out the hate and injustice of the old age with the love and justice of the new age." And drawing again upon Greek philosophy, he elaborates by saying that we're not talking about eros or philia, but agape, which he explains is the type of love, this is very powerful, that causes you to love the person who does the evil deed while hating the deed that the person does. So in the final section of the speech, King stresses that while it is true that the old order is passing away, we must speed up the coming of the inevitable. There is a bit of urgency about it. He tells the audience it is urgent to pass legislation that extends the right to vote to African Americans. He adds that it is important to develop courageous, intelligent, and dedicated leadership. He describes them as leaders not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. Leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice. Leaders who can subject their particular egos to the greatness of the cause. And he closes by urging his audience to practice passive resistance, that philosophy that had informed the Montgomery bus boycott. Again, picking up on one of the mayor's themes, he says, "Resist, but not with violence. Resist at every point with all of your soul and with all of the courage you can muster up, but not with violence." And he says that we will be able, by the help of God, to bring in this new world, a world in which everybody will respect the dignity and worth of all human personality. The speech closes with a refrain that was repeated in King's most famous and most often quoted speech, "I have a dream." I don't know whether he did this or not, Ruth, you'll have to tell me afterwards. But in the speech I found, King may very well have stood on the stage behind us and intoned, "Freedom must ring from every mountainside. Let it ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let it ring from the mighty Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let it ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Let it ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let it ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. From every mountainside, let freedom ring." I can imagine, we can imagine, that at this point, inspired by this brilliant, charismatic, and most importantly, courageous man who was a remarkable orator, the students and others in attendance must have burst into applause. And with that image in mind, I would now like to invite students representing the Unifying Lycoming Leadership Council to bring a replica of the plaque in front of the stage. The actual plaque will be available in the foyer where it will be hung permanently, and Mayor Slaughter and I will go down off the stage to join the students in unveiling the replica of the plaque. Thank you.
How about on a 1, 2, 3? 1, 2, 3. For those in the back who can't see, it says, on April 24th, 1958, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. addressed the assembled Lycoming College community in Clark Chapel. I would like to thank you once again for joining us for this very special evening and invite you to visit with one another and enjoy refreshments in the foyer of the chapel. Thank you so much.